Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are in this mashava with Rabbi Adin, even Israel Steinsaltz, an overview to Jewish philosophy, koranpub.com. If you're interested in purchasing this book, today we're going to be looking at old age. So thus far we've looked at, for the life cycle, how Israel looks at pregnancy and birth, how they look at naming a child, how do they understand the covenant of circumcision, what does it mean to be bar mitzvahed, what is the purpose of a Jewish wedding, and now we're looking to see what Israel thinks about old age. So let's get into it. This is a book written by Rabbi Adin, even Steinsaltz, Israel Steinsaltz, for the purpose of explaining the whys to a lot of things that Israel does, so that they can know, and in the benefit of him explaining that, how Judaism works, how the sages thought about these things, the wise men of Judaism, we too can learn these things. So let's go. I'd like to dedicate this shiur to Rabbi Stephen Bernstein, and also my mother, Iris Elizabeth Roque, and Carolyn Jones. Who would you like to dedicate this shiur to? May their memory be for a blessing. Okay, let's go. Old age. We all getting there. Yeah. So the first human was also the first to be condemned with death. Wait, whoa, that's a way to start. Rabbi, is that how we're starting this?
Yes, Jennifer, that's how we're going to start this.
Let's go. The first human was also the first to be condemned to death. Every individual ages and eventually reaches the end of his days. Over the years, one's strength and physical desires weaken, and he becomes more able to strengthen his mind and to connect to God. A person who in his youth has developed his intellect and has chosen an upright path will see with the years how his mind becomes more composed. In contrast, one who allowed his impulses and physical desires to rule over him will notice over the years that his strength leaves him and his life loses its savor. We must value the rich life experience of the elderly and make use of it. The elderly themselves can make time for Torah study and spiritual pursuits without having to be concerned with making a living. So this section is now subtitled The Distinction Between Young and Old. Excuse me. When one is young, his physical strength is dominant, but as he gets older, his physical strength leaves him, as do his desires. At this time, he can rejoice in his intellectual achievements. One who invests in his intellect and rejoices in it will be able to yearn for God and desire to connect to him in old age. So the philosophers clarify that during the period of youth, physiological forces are an obstacle to reaching almost all levels of virtue, and all the more so to acquiring the clear thinking that comes from perfection of the mind and that causes one to desire God, may he be exalted. As this is not possible when the bodily fluids are boiling. However, as physical strength weakens and the fire of one's desires fades, the intellect grows stronger and its light spreads and its understanding is purified, and one rejoices in that which he has understood, and the desire for God increases. That comes from the Rambam to the Guide of the Perplexed, part 3, verse 51. So, if one chooses a good path in his youth and does not submit to physical desires, then as the years pass and his physical strength leaves him, his mind becomes serene and he rejoices over the fact that he chose the good. In contrast, if one chooses to follow the worldly pleasures in his youth and subdues the voice of the intellect, then as the years pass and his physical strength leaves him, his mind is unsettled and he cannot make peace with the choices of his youth. The minds of older Torah scholars are settled. And here's a quote here: ignorant people's minds grow unsettled as they age, But the minds of Torah elders become composed as they age. That comes from Mishnah Kinim, chapter 3, verses 6. This does not mean that as they become older, their wisdom increases, as this may not be the case. Since the mind requires physical vessels, it's possible that when someone becomes very old, those vessels will become very weak, and the mind too will become weak. Rather, it says their minds become composed. And the explanation is that Torah elders, who in their youth set aside worldly appetites and chose the good path, become more and more content as they grow older, and their minds are at ease with regard to their choices. Okay, I need a sip of tea. And just to recap that, studying Torah, understanding what Hashem's purpose is for his creation, his world, and looking at how Israel, trying to understand how Israel, the people, understand how life works, as that understanding has really been passed on to them to give to us. This is studying Torah. So when we do that in our younger years, our mind gets settled as we get older because we understand how things work. Things make more sense. I mean, look, we're reading a book about the life cycles, how life works, and hopefully that brings some comfort there. That's his heist. Okay. Next section, young people experience conflict between their reason and their physical desires. So this is because it's impossible that their immaturity does not cause them occasionally to submit to temptation in their youth, even though they have committed to renounce worldly appetites and excesses, and they know they are not behaving rationally, torn as they are between these opposing forces, which is reason and appetite. Their minds cannot be entirely settled. However, once they begin aging and their appetites weaken, and they perceive that whatever they imagine concerning matters of this world is totally null and void, fleeting and insignificant, then reason is not in conflict with that perception. And they are settled of mind because they see clearly that they chose the good and were committed to it, and all the pleasure they took in the world is meaningless, so they should not regret having given it up. Okay, the next part of this same subsection regarding the distinction between young and old. The last part is, ignorant people are unsettled in their old age. And this is going to be coming from Rabbeinu Nissim Garandi from his book, The Derashot Haran, chapter 10. However, he says the opposite occurs to ignorant people. In their youth, they are tempted by their worldly desires, and their minds are susceptible at that time and at ease, and they are not concerned about the fact that their behavior is irrational. As they age and pleasure in the physical world, the physical world slips away from them and they from it. They perceive that all of their appetites and preferences in the days of their youth were nothingness and emptiness. Because of this, their minds are unsettled with regard to their former lifestyle. I can think of quite a few aunties in my family that tried to stay young, dressing young, and getting these young men, and I'm sure some people know what I'm talking about, but I'm sure we have seen these older people who are just trying to relive their glory days, or they never let them go. And you're thinking like, you're older, you should be spouting out wisdom so that us next generation is not, that we make the right decisions faster. But sometimes these older people are in competition with the young, and you're sitting there like baffled, like what is going on here? And ignorant people are unsettled in their old age. So let's stick with Torah and understanding how this world works so that we can kind of avoid that pitfall. I want to be giving out wisdom in my older age, not be an empty fountain with no water coming out of it. You know what I'm saying? Here's the next section. It's called, What Should One Do in Old Age? So in a world where the main measure of a person's contribution is his productivity as a worker, A person who reaches old age often retires or is dismissed from his job. However, the old have a significant advantage over the young as they are more stable and possess rich life experiences. An employer who fires his older workers is harming himself. In old age, one can study Torah while in a state of spiritual and physical tranquility and can strengthen the spiritual aspect of his life. The accepted practice of the elderly leaving their workplaces is mistaken. From the concealed and dark aspects of the world, a false understanding was generated that since old age brings with it physical weaknesses, the elderly are therefore unable to work, create, or accomplish. Therefore, they are required to leave their jobs and give up their work. It's obvious that such an assumption inspires dejection and depression in the elderly. They are old, they are no longer capable of anything substantial, and they are a burden on their families. That's what these people think. And the next subsection of what should one do in old age says, according to the Torah, in all matters of wisdom and intellect, the elderly should be the most involved. According to the truth of the Torah, the exact opposite is the case. Aside from physical weakness, in old age, one has attained the equality of the magnitude of years, the quality of the multitude of years should expound wisdom. The multitude of years should expound wisdom. You find that in Job chapter 32, verse 7. And the minds of Torah elders become composed as they age. That's from Mishnah Kenim, chapter 3, verse 6. Even those who are not Torah scholars will have the advantage of intellect and wisdom as a result of the many experiences they've had. And we find that in Kiddushin 33a. Because of the rich life experience that elderly people have acquired over the years, young people need their advice. Since one's intellectual capacity, which is the most essential part of a person, does not deteriorate, but on the contrary, the multitude of years should expound wisdom. It's obvious that in matters of wisdom and intellect, they should be extremely active. Okay, and this is the last part of this section. Oh, no, it's a continuation on. So another thought about what should one do in old age. So as a result of the dismissal of the aged, businesses too are adversely affected. You business owners, listen up. From this, it becomes clear with regard to something that is accepted as part of the normal course of events that when people reach old age, they are partially or completely dismissed from the place where they made a living, that this is detrimental to the business and detrimental to them, even though the intentions of those who institute this policy may be good. Another thought is regarding what should one do in old age. Old age is the time to study Torah with spiritual tranquility. So Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson from Sihot 5740 has something to say about that. Regarding old age is a time to study Torah and spiritual tranquility. Since the elderly have reached old age with God's blessing, the intention of the Holy One, blessed is He, is that out of the weakness of body will emerge might of soul, that they should use their time to study Torah with spiritual and physical calm without confusion or concerns about the troubles of making a living. Okay, here's that little story that we get from Rabbi Steinsaltz. Always gives us a little story. Rabbi Yehuda Arya Leib Alter, the older, the Safat Emet, I would say that would be translated as the Book of Truth or the Book of Reality. He, who was the third Rebbe of the Hasidic dynasty of Ger, he passed away at age 58. When his sons were returning from their father's funeral, his eldest son, Rabbi Avraham Mordechai, who is the author of Imre Emet, he said to his brother, Rabbi Moshe Betzalel, "Thank God our father merited a long life." Astonished, his younger brother responded, But our father did not even reach old age." Rabbi Avraham Mordechai answered him, It is true that our father did not live for many years, but all of his days were certainly long and full. And here's a few quotes that Rav Steinsaltz put in here for us to understand this concept even more. This one comes from Rabbi Eliezer Papo, who wrote the Pele Yoetz in Zikna. So, when one reaches old age, he should attach himself to the sages, like we're doing now, and to books of knowledge, Torah, these kind of books, and his eyes will be open to these matters. And he must not waste this precious free time. Here's a quote from Rabbeinu Yonah from the Sha'arei Tshuva, the Gates of Repentance, in chapter 2, verse 9. Righteous people become mightier in their old age. Righteous people. They gather strength and gain power for the service of God. And here's our last quote from Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk. Sound like a Polish word, I don't know. Train the lad in accordance with his way. Even when he grows old, he will not turn from it. That's Proverbs 22, verse 6. Even when he's an old man, he should constantly be educating himself. And just shout out to everyone that's subscribing and joining our channel and putting themselves on this regimen of a schedule that we have, where you're constantly educating yourself in the Torah, because you're never supposed to stop learning of Hashem, how this world works, the way he designed it, the way that the Israel people, the Jewish people understand that. That's what we in Western thinking have to do. We have to see, how does Israel understand this? Because it's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is Jacob's other name, Israel. So don't stop educating yourself. Every Monday, Thursday, and Shabbat, we do a video. It comes out just the same. Those are the same 3 days that the prophet and the Cohen Ezra dictated for Israel to bring that to hear the Torah in their ears these 3 days per week. So on Shabbat, we look at the Torah Parsha. On Monday, we always do some sort of Mussar and some type of ethical training or understanding. And on Thursdays, we do the prophets, the Nevi'im. So join us on this regimen so you too can keep your mind growing, educated. And as you get older, you find more comfort because now you understand how things work, as opposed to having life always thrown at you. Now you can understand when things happen, what that means, and you can make better decisions on how to deal with that or how to understand it, because you're doing it from the understanding of Israel. So I hope you enjoyed that. And hey, write down below what part really stood out to you. Let's get a little discussion going. And see you next time. Our next reading is going to be on, let's see, death and burial, or death and mourning. So that will be the final part of our life cycle. And then we'll jump into another section of this book. I mean to go through this whole book. So I'm going to tell you right now, this book has amazing things in it. So if you're interested in this book, you can get this from korenpub.com. I'll put it in the video. See you next time.